next speaker is, actually our next two speakers are from the New Hampshire chapter of the Sierra Club, and they helped us put together our comments that we've already submitted to the department. And we'll first hear from attorney Arthur Cunningham, and he lives in Hopkinton, and his topic is, I think it was just and reasonable. Is that right?
Just and reasonable rates.
Right, just and reasonable rates. Sounds legal.
What I want to talk about, I want to first mention the Depression. In the early 1930s, Congress, the United States Congress, passed the Federal Power Act. And the underlying premise of the Federal Power Act was that electricity needed to be spread across this country. And it's spread across this country via transmission. But the underlying goal of the Federal Power Act is that rates, electric rates for retail ratepayers, should be just and reasonable. Not too long after that, New Hampshire, some years perhaps, passed a similar set of pieces of legislation in which electricity rates must be just and reasonable. So what I want to talk about tonight is transmission costs. I don't know if you look at your bill, but one of the largest parts of your electric bill is transmission. And interstate transmission, that's where the generation comes from, most of it, or much of it, is regulated by FERC. FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And FERC, of course, supervises the wholesale sale of electricity and the transmission of electricity across state lines across our country. Under FERC is ISO New England. And under ISO New England is our local PUC and our local Department of Energy. What I want to do tonight, and what I want to do as we go forward with this, is challenge our Department of Energy to understand how important the transmission rates are to retail ratepayers, and why isn't the Department of Energy, the New Hampshire Department of Energy, participating in how retail or how transmission rates are set. Let me give you an example. In the last 4 years, let's say 2018 through 2024, our utilities spent $1.8 billion on rebuilds of transmission facilities in the ISO New England area. Of that, New Hampshire pays about 10%. And I did a quick math on that. So in the last 4 years, about $250 million in transmission costs were loaded on the New Hampshire ratepayers. And who in New Hampshire looked? Who in New Hampshire, what agency, what body looked at that $250 million of transmission costs? Who in the federal government? Did ISO New England look or review the need for billions of dollars worth of transmission costs? I can tell you this, and I learned this the hard way. ISO New England bailed, totally. In other words, all these billions of dollars worth of transmission costs were exempted from any review. There was no review of whether these these builds were needed, whether the costs of the projects had prudent costs, and whether the transmission ended up with just and reasonable rates. No review at all. And I'll tell you what happened next. Those rates, those transmission costs, there's no review at the federal level, there's no review at the state level, those costs get rolled automatically onto your bill. And I'll tell you what it is. It's called formula rates. So about annually, these billions of dollars of unreviewed costs for transmission get rolled into your bill. There's no rate case, there's no scrutiny at any level. And what happened then, that FERC, that's the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, issued two really important orders. I was going to bring them with me tonight as props. It was about this thick. And what FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, said is the planning process for transmission in our country is unjust, unreasonable, unduly discriminatory, and preferential. In other words, FERC issued hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages criticizing the way transmission is built and paid for in this country. And keep in mind, who builds transmission? Utilities. Utilities are a monopoly. And what does that mean? That means that these unsupervised, unregulated, unreviewed costs get rolled into your bill automatically with no review. And on top of that, they get at least a 10+% rate of return. It's just a bad thing. Another particular thing about FERC, when they issued these massive orders on this unreviewed transmission, these unreviewed transmission costs, they singled out ISO New England for particular criticism because of the billions of dollars that the utilities in our region, that's the New England region, the billions of dollars of unreviewed costs, they singled ISO New England out for not doing its job. So what I want to say to the Department of Energy, and one of the orders, the second order, which was just issued in November of last year, FERC said that states can participate in the review process of these huge transmission costs. So my challenge to DOE, my strong challenge to DOE is get to work. Do your job. Participate in these builds, these rebuilds, and help ratepayers understand that what they're paying for is needed, that the costs are just and reasonable, and that those huge bills and those huge costs for transmission will result in just and reasonable rates. Hope I didn't go too long, Kathy.
Yeah, you're good.